Losing financial support was the breaking point for me. I had been holding everything together, working multiple jobs and raising my kids on my own. Then, my sister Chloe and my mother turned against me. They told me, "This is what happens when you don't educate yourself." They said I should never come back, laughing as they looked at each other. When I turned around, I saw my daughters almost in tears. I couldn't take it anymore, so I said, "Fine, but you'll regret this." They were surprised for a second, then smirked and said, "Do what you want. It doesn't matter to us if you stay or leave." I told them, "By the way, I'm remarrying someone very successful." After saying that, I felt a sense of relief. I gathered my daughters, and we went inside to get ready to leave the house. As we packed our things, I told my daughters, "You've all been so strong these past 3 months." The next day, Chloe kept calling me, but I didn't feel the need to answer. Her messages showed she was panicking, but I felt confident in our decision. My name is Layla, and I'm 33 years old. I have several part-time jobs to support my family as a single mother. I met my ex-husband when I was 27, and we were married a year later. My children mean everything to me. I have an 8-year-old daughter, a 7-year-old daughter, a 1-year-old son, and a 1-year-old boy. We got divorced after I found out he had been cheating during my last pregnancy. One day, I came home early from work and found my daughters upset outside. My 1-year-old was with me, and it was shocking to see the other kids locked out of the house. My ex had invited his new girlfriend over and told the girls to stay outside. It was winter, and they were supposed to be home by 6:10 p.m., as their school had instructed, but they were confused and left standing at the door. I was furious about how he treated our family, so I demanded a separation. After the divorce, he signed the papers without hesitation but refused to pay any alimony or child support. He ran off with his girlfriend, and since the house was in his name, I had to leave with the children and find an apartment. This big change affected my health, and I eventually lost my job. I had quit my old job after our marriage, and he also left his job, probably to avoid being found. They both cut off all contact with me, and I was left feeling angry and hopeless, but I was determined to support my kids, so I took up several part-time jobs. During the day, I worked at a cafe and stocked shelves at a drugstore. At night, I occasionally worked at a friend's bar. A friend's sister helped watch my children whenever I could pay her. After a tough year, I had my 4th child, my youngest son. Even though I was exhausted, I kept going. One day, my routine was interrupted by repeated calls from an unknown number. At first, I thought it was just spam, but the calls kept coming, and I became curious. I checked online but didn't find anything unusual about the number. I kept ignoring the calls until I unexpectedly ran into Chloe at the supermarket. Surprised, I managed to smile and asked how she had found my workplace and gotten my number. With a smug look, she told me she had hired a detective. She said she was willing to spend money but didn't want to waste too much. I was shocked by her sudden interest in reconnecting, and I felt uneasy about her intentions, especially toward my children. After work, I reluctantly called her back. She asked to meet at a nearby diner. She didn't seem to understand my life as a single mother. When I told her I had to take care of my kids, she laughed at me, mocking who would want to marry someone like me. Her harsh words hurt and reminded me of old wounds. I firmly told her it was none of her business and told her not to contact me again before hanging up and blocking her number. Even though the call was short, it left me emotionally drained and reminded me of the struggles I had overcome. After talking to my mom about some troubling thoughts, I felt sick and quickly went to pick up my kids. The evening was peaceful, spent just with my children, as Chloe was nowhere to be seen. But about a month later, I noticed movers next door. To my shock, it was Chloe and my mom. I hadn't spoken to my mom in years, and her judgmental look was all too familiar. She taunted me, implying I had been kicked out because my husband cheated on me. She called me and my kids ugly ducklings who would never become swans. Even though I felt a chill from her words, I stayed calm and asked why they had moved next door. It turned out my mom had hired a detective because I had blocked their calls, and they were desperate to get in touch. My mom was now sick and needed care. The idea that I should take care of a mother who had never cared for me was absurd. My anger grew, and my hands shook as I confronted them about how they had treated me. Chloe grabbed my arm, saying it was my duty to care for our mother. I pulled away and locked myself in my house, shutting them out despite their constant knocking. Inside, my sons comforted me. One was anxious, and the other smiled innocently. I reassured myself and my children that I would protect them no matter what. When I had to leave for work, a close friend from high school noticed I was upset. I told her about my mom and sister moving next door and their expectations. She was angry for me and told me to ignore them since they had treated me badly for so long. Her support was comforting. We had both worked hard growing up. I had to work jobs to pay for school, while she went to college and had a supportive family. Now, she wasn't just a friend, but also a lifeline, helping me through the challenges of life as a working mom. I grew up with a mom who eventually started working part-time for her own fulfillment. Talking to my friend gave me a small break from the stress. However, that relief didn't last long. When I got home, my mom and sister confronted me outside. They were upset and insisted I should help more with my mom's needs. They claimed her joint pain made it hard for her to do things, but she seemed perfectly fine and was just making her life easier at my expense. I was frustrated, so I pushed past them and locked myself inside. They didn't give up, though. They kept shouting until a neighbor likely called the police. The officers came and told them to stop harassing me. The situation didn't end there. Soon after, my brother-in-law, who had been staying with my sister, returned. He and Chloe teamed up to mock me for not having a college degree and treated me like an embarrassment to the family. I couldn't afford to move out, and they never missed a chance to ridicule me. Chloe's husband was especially cruel, telling me to know my place whenever I tried to stand up for myself. Meanwhile, my mom, who was still in good health, demanded I drive her to her part-time job and doctor's appointments. I also had to cover her medical bills. Even when I got sick and couldn't afford a doctor, she continued to receive top-tier care, all at my expense. One day, she had an accident and broke her leg. Needing surgery, she insisted I pay for it, saying that she took care of me when I was young. I thought her reasoning was ridiculous because she hadn't done much for me growing up. Her demands made me feel trapped and helpless. Even though she was financially stable, she barely supported me, while Chloe got many privileges like private schooling, music lessons, and tutoring. My mom rarely went to any of my school events, but was always there for Chloe, including her high school graduation. I managed to graduate with good grades, despite having to pay for my own tuition and work part-time, thanks to support from my high school counselor. But my mom refused to help with my higher education, so I couldn't pursue my dreams. Leaving my childhood home was the start of a new chapter. For the first time, I could make my own choices, like buying my own clothes instead of wearing Chloe's old hand-me-downs. While I was building my own life, Chloe continued to enjoy our mother's favoritism. Even though I was free, my life wasn't easy. The betrayal from my ex-husband felt small compared to what I had gone through before, but it still hurt when he refused to support our children. My expectations were low, but the disappointment still lingered. I began to question why, after everything I had been through, I should now be responsible for my mother's care. One day, while standing in line to pay her medical bills, memories of past pain overwhelmed me. I turned around and walked out, ignoring her desperate calls as she hobbled after me on crutches. Both she and Chloe, who had 2 jobs, were financially stable enough without my help. As I drove away, I felt a rush of empowerment, even though this angered them even more. When I got home, I found Chloe yelling at my daughters, accusing me of abandoning our mother at the hospital. I quickly stepped in to protect my kids, telling Chloe, "This isn't their concern. Mom can take care of her own expenses." Things escalated when my mom appeared, shouting insults and saying I was an embarrassment, even declaring that she disowned me. Chloe joined in, mocking my life choices. Despite their harsh words, I felt an unexpected sense of relief. I was resolute. I told my daughters, "We're leaving tonight. You've all been so strong. Pack your things quietly, and let's get in the car." Their eyes filled with tears, but they also had a spark of determination. We were ready to move forward, leaving the past behind and embracing a future with peace and maybe even happiness. We decided to leave once Chloe started her night shift, and her husband was busy. We packed only the essentials, got into the car, and left quietly in the dark. The next morning, my phone was flooded with missed calls and messages from Chloe, all of which I ignored. Her frantic messages showed how desperate she was, but deep down, I knew they had always depended on me more than they admitted. 4 months, I had been carefully planning our escape. Financial challenges and a lack of housing had delayed me, but I had been saving. Finally, an apartment opened up in a different district, and I took it, securing a fresh start for my daughters, far away from my relatives' negative influence. We arrived at our new home, tired but relieved. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. A week later, I contacted Chloe. She answered with annoyance, demanding to know where I had been and expecting an explanation. I gave her a brief response and made it clear I wouldn't be offering any help anymore. Then I hung up and blocked her number to stop further harassment. I knew she might try to hire a detective again, but I was prepared. As life started to settle, I left my kids with friends for the weekend and decided to confront my family one last time. We met at a local diner. They looked ready to challenge me, questioning if I had told the police where I had been. I tried to stay calm, but Chloe's anger only grew. My mom suddenly softened, calling me sweetheart and saying she hadn't meant her harsh words. She asked for a financial loan, pretending it was about family ties. Their hypocrisy was obvious. After years of treating me badly, they were now reaching out only because they needed money. I had previously reported Chloe's suspicious behavior at work to the police, which led to their involvement. It turned out Chloe had been fired for embezzlement, something she had kept secret from her husband, who believed her job was their main source of income. It became clear that they weren't trying to find me out of concern, but to shift the responsibility of caring for their mother onto me, freeing themselves from any financial or caregiving duties. They had even planned for our mother to babysit, pretending Chloe was working overtime to cover medical expenses, when in reality, they expected me to handle everything. This confirmed my suspicions and made me even more determined to keep my distance and start fresh, free from their manipulation. In a heartfelt conversation, my daughter shared how her grandmother often came home exhausted from work late at night. Around the same time, I learned from a concerned family member that Chloe had been secretly stealing from customers at her shop. After discovering this, I reported it to the police but asked them to wait until my children and I were settled in our new home before investigating. Once we were settled, I found out that while Chloe's children were being taken care of, Chloe herself was facing the consequences of her actions. My mother, however, ignored Chloe's wrongdoings, which included selling off community property for personal gain. This betrayal hurt both the community and me deeply, especially as my family turned against me for exposing Chloe. The truth finally came out when my niece, disillusioned by her mother's behavior, confided in my daughter, combined with several community complaints. This led the police to take action. When confronted, my family could no longer deny the truth and were ashamed of what had happened. I knew they would now have to face legal consequences and public embarrassment. Leaving the diner after the confrontation, I felt a deep sense of relief, as though I had closed a painful chapter of my life. At home, my children were playing happily, unaware of the family drama that had just unfolded. For the first time in a long time, I felt real peace. My father supported me through this ordeal, offering to help with any financial burdens from the upcoming legal battles. He wanted to ensure justice for his grandchildren and make up for lost time, which I was truly grateful for. In the weeks that followed, Chloe faced legal consequences, and her damaged reputation began to affect her life. Family members who had criticized me before started to see her true nature and distanced themselves from her. My mother, once powerful and controlling, found herself isolated and burdened with debt, forced to downgrade her lifestyle. Meanwhile, I thrived in a new job where I felt valued and respected. Slowly, I was building a peaceful life that I had never imagined possible. Each morning, I sent my children off to school with a smile, relieved that they were safe and could follow their dreams without any burdens. My relationship with my father grew stronger, and he became a key part of my children's lives, enriching them with his wisdom and stories. As time went on, each day brought us further from past pain and closer to happiness. Despite all the hardships I had faced, I became stronger and more resilient. Seeing the joy on my children's faces reminded me that all the struggles had been worth it. We were finally free, and I had given them the greatest gift of all, freedom and happiness.